The sun rose over the plains of southern Italy on a hot summer morning in 216 BCE. The land near the small village of Cannae looked calm and ordinary, but both sides knew that by nightfall, history would be drenched in blood. Two massive armies stood facing each other, and the fate of Rome itself seemed to hang in the air. On one side was Rome, proud, confident, and determined to crush its greatest enemy. The Roman Republic had gathered one of the largest armies it had ever assembled. Nearly 80,000 men stood shoulder to shoulder, believing that sheer numbers would finally end the threat that had haunted them for years. On the other side stood Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who had already humiliated Rome again and again. He had crossed mountains with elephants, defeated Roman armies on their own land, and survived against impossible odds. His force at Cannae was smaller, but it was experienced, disciplined, and led by a man who understood war better than almost anyone alive. Rome believed this battle would be simple. Their commanders, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, trusted in Roman strength and tradition. The plan was straightforward: push forward, break the enemy center, win by force. Hannibal had a different plan. He knew he could not match Rome man for man. Instead, he would let Rome believe it was winning. He would turn Roman confidence into a trap. As the armies advanced, dust rose into the air, and the sound of marching feet echoed across the plain. Roman soldiers pressed forward in tight formation, shields locked, swords ready. They believed that once they made contact, the enemy would crumble. Hannibal placed his weakest troops in the center. Gauls and Iberians stood slightly forward, forming a curved line that bulged toward the Romans. His strongest soldiers, the African infantry, waited on the flanks, calm and deadly. When the fighting began, the Roman center pushed hard. Step by step, Hannibal's middle line slowly gave ground. To the Romans, it looked like victory. The enemy was retreating. The trap was working perfectly. Roman soldiers surged forward with growing excitement. They packed tighter and tighter as they advanced, focused only on crushing what was in front of them. They did not notice how the enemy line was bending inward around them. Then the moment came. Hannibal's flanks moved. The African infantry turned inward, striking the Roman sides with brutal precision. At the same time, Hannibal's cavalry, already victorious on the wings, swept behind the Roman army. In a short time, the Romans were completely surrounded. What followed was not a battle, it was a slaughter. Trapped on all sides, the Roman soldiers could barely move. Their numbers worked against them. There was no room to swing a sword, no space to retreat, no escape. Men screamed, pushed, fell, and were trampled underfoot. Hour after hour, the killing continued. Hannibal's soldiers worked methodically, cutting down Romans who were packed so tightly that the dead often remained standing, held upright by the living. The Roman commanders were helpless. Paulus was killed. Varro fled with a small group of survivors. The proud Roman army, once so confident, was being erased from existence. By the end of the day, the scale of the disaster became clear. Around 50,000 Roman soldiers lay dead on the field. Some estimates say even more. Thousands were captured. Only a small fraction escaped. Rome had never suffered such a loss. Entire families were wiped out. Senators lost sons, brothers, and fathers in a single day. The Republic was stunned into silence. News of the defeat spread like wildfire. Allies began to question Rome's strength. Enemies sensed opportunity. For a moment, it seemed possible that Rome itself might fall. But Hannibal did not march on Rome. His army was exhausted, far from home, and lacked the resources for a siege. Instead, he waited, hoping Rome would surrender or collapse from within. Rome did neither. The shock of Cannae changed Rome forever. The Republic abandoned reckless pride and learned patience. New strategies emerged. Generals avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal and slowly wore him down instead. Cannae became a lesson written in blood. It showed that intelligence could defeat numbers, that discipline could overcome strength, that arrogance could destroy even the mightiest power. Military leaders across history would study this battle. From ancient generals to modern officers, Cannae became the perfect example of encirclement and tactical brilliance. For Rome, the memory never faded. It was the day Rome looked into the abyss and survived, not by winning, but by enduring. The plains of Cannae are quiet now. The dust has settled. The cries are long gone. But the lesson remains, carved deeply into history. It was the day Rome watched its army die, and from those ashes, a stronger, more cautious Rome was born. Cannae reminds us that war is not won by numbers alone, but by minds, decisions, and timing. One day can change everything. One mistake can echo for centuries. And as we close this story, remember this moment when confidence became catastrophe and genius turned the tide of history forever. Thank you for staying with me through this journey into the ancient world. If you enjoyed this story and want more battles, mysteries, and forgotten moments from history, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and I'll see you in the next one.